A happy new year to you all from the Combat Corner family. I, of course, am Preston Palm. That's my co host, Austin Jackson, and this is our 2024 UFC award show. We're going to look back on 2024, which was one of the best years in UFC history as far as profit for them, as far as fights, as far as events. We're going to break down 14 different categories. But before we do so, AJ, how did you spend your new year?
My New Year's, I watched Dante DiVincenzo make two shots all night long.
You went to see you went to see Minnesota play against OKC, right?
Yep. Hey, never forget when we were up by 13 points.
So yeah, those who need the context, AJ is a giant Timberwolves fan, has been for a while, and safe to say you didn't ring in the new year how you wanted to.
Blew a lead. And had 15 points while Shea went and scored 40. So
And the next game, I believe, had 53, and y'all still lost again.
it was two games after that.
Okay, yeah.
Played the Celtics and he scored 53 against the Pistons and we lost. But he scored 37 tonight and we beat the Clippers by 2. And we're not sub 500.
There you go. Hey, on the come up, maybe, probably not.
No, maybe, bro. And if Ant keeps balling.
Well, luckily, one thing you won't have to worry about in 2025 is the UFC not producing. But like I said before we switch over to 2025, we've got some awards to hand out. And for our first award of the year, we have pay-per-view of the year. Just before we start presenting awards, just some context. We picked the winners collectively. AJ and I both agree on the winners, and then we will mention some honorable mentions. So for pay-per-view of the year, I think the biggest honorable mention, the runner-up, if you will, has to be UFC 308 Abu Dhabi, Holloway versus Topuria. That fight alone could make any of these pay-per-views as a runner-up for this award. And then you had Shar Bullet having one of the best knockouts of the year, maybe the best knockout. We'll see. And all in all, that was just an electric day of fights. You always love a good day card in the UFC.
Oh yeah, was it like 130?
Yeah, it was great. Do you have any other honorable mentions, AJ, that you would like to highlight before we announce the winner?
Personally, one of my favorite ones of the year was 310. I was really interested. I got the poster back there. I was really interested like on every fight, basically. I really like 310. And 299 as well. I definitely would be up there in the top 3 of this year.
Yeah,
the
1,000%
on that in Miami. He got O'Malley. He finally got his pink shorts and dog walks Cheeto Vera. Dustin Poirier gets a knockout. He's so back.
Was so back.
It's okay. We got that poster too.
That's cool. I mean, you can't ask for more than a DP knockout, and
got to see MVP come to the UFC.
Yeah, 1,000%. He always brings that character, that energy. Even though the fight itself wasn't the craziest thing ever, he always brings that energy that you want to see, and his walkout was electric. So.
Oh yeah, but there's only one winner, and it's not even close. UFC.
It's not even close. 300. I'll let you get into it in a second, but for me, just top to bottom, I know for a fact I haven't seen a fight card this stacked in my life. You have the early prelim first night fight of the night, Cody Garbrandt versus Davison Figueiredo, two former champions. I think there was over double-digit amount of either current or former champions on the card, and
11% of all UFC champions in the history.
Yeah, that just we could stop talking about it right there. That's all you need to hear. But I mean, with 300, you had Moicano's crazy comeback against Turner. You had the debut of Kayla Harrison. You had Holloway's crazy knockout of Justin Gaethje in the final moments of that fight, even though he was winning. And then, of course, at the end of the bill, you have Alex Pineda starting off what ended up being the best year of his career and probably his life, knocking out Jamal Hill in the first round. after
Yeah.
what was kind of a weird fight week for them. They started off you were watching Embedded, and they seemed like they were cool, and then press conference comes around and Jamal was just firing all the shots, but Alex did
Hey,
not.
I will say Jamal Hill carried the press conference. I'm not gonna lie.
He
Like
was he was active.
if Jamal Hill was not there, that press conference would have been buns. But uh, I mean, he was just so witty and funny. Didn't translate, but he was by far the best person in that press conference.
It's also crazy too, because like before the 300 main event was announced, it was kind of getting a little close to the card where us fans were kind of wondering, what are they going to do for this main event? Is it going to be the Holloway fight? Like, are they going to make some big splash that is going to be 300 worthy? The fan base was just kind of overwhelmingly worried about this fight card. And then even when Pereira and Jamal Hill got announced, it baffled me that people were complaining about this fight card not being 300 worthy or
Yeah,
anything of that nature. I mean, this card delivered, over delivered, and it's the clear choice for event of the year. It's not even close.
easily. All right. Our next award was Fight Night Card of the Year. Some ones that stuck out besides our winner were Saudi Arabia card with Whitaker and Ikram. I thought that was really good, really fun. Got to see Volkov extend the win streak. Pavlovich lost all of his aura, no more.
I mean, yeah, going into that fight, I did not expect to see Pavlovich just get pummeled for 3 rounds, especially, I mean, going into that Tom Aspinall fight last year, Pavlovich was the scariest dude in the UFC. He had everything going for him. People were saying that John Jones wouldn't have even been willing to fight him, but it's wasn't a good night for Pavlovich, and his stock definitely went down a little bit. But you also had Shara again. He stayed active this year. He was on that card, had a
Yeah,
beautiful knockout, and I believe round 3. And then a vintage Robert Whitaker performance you're never going to complain about. I mean, he turned it on Ikram. He took advantage of the late notice opponent.
well,
Excuse me. And yeah, I mean that card delivered through and through. And Saudi Arabia is a giant market right now in the fight game, more so with boxing right now than MMA. But I do think going into 2025, they're gonna be very
oh yeah,
active and involved in
and that's a
MMA in
good thing because
general.
they'll give us better fights because they can afford it.
Absolutely. You've seen what they've done for boxing. I mean, it's absolutely lit boxing up, giving us the fights that we want, which is always the complaint about boxing. But for Fight Night Card of the Year,
Well, and there was another one, UFC Macau. That one was
yes,
really good too.
yes.
Uh,
Piotr Jan defeats Davison Figueiredo by, was it split decision or was it
I think it
unanimous?
was a UD.
It
Peter
was a
Yan
UD. It was a
put
competitive
on
fight.
put on a
It was
master
a
class.
competitive fight. It was fun. Ultimately, I scored it 5-0 for Jan. At most, you could argue a 4-1 for Figgy, but it was competitive the whole time. It was fun. And you also
And
had the,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was saying, and I literally thought I saw someone die that night.
Yeah, you had the road to the UFC fights in the early prelims, and I mean, you had that head kick from the women fight in that road to the UFC event. That there's only one other time that I thought someone died in the octagon, and that was Francis Ngannou and out knocking out Alistair Overeem. So that speaks to how crazy that knockout was, and her being stretchered off. It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was literally like 3 a.m. and I'm up watching it, and I literally have it on my TV, and I have MMA gurus like him listening
Yeah.
party, and I was just watching that. And Guru's like, bro, I think she's dead. But all those were really good. All those were good choices. But our fight night of the year was indeed Tampa, the last card of the year, and it delivered. It was
Closed out the
really
year with a closed out the year with a bang. I mean,
yeah,
Buckley surging onto the scene at 170. Since he's moved down from 185, he's looked quite literally elite. Just he would have been pitching a shutout to Colby um had the Dodgers not stopped that fight. And Colby, while he was on the losing end of most of the exchanges, even on the ground, he was still giving it his best. He was active in the striking,
Um,
trying to be at least.
hey,
Um,
and Chael Sonnen said he was coming back. He was gonna win that fight.
yeah, Chael Sonnen in the ceremonial weigh-ins said that Colby Covington was the best fighter in the world.
And that's a real thing, guys. That's a real thing.
If Chael
Colby
says
Covington.
it,
If Chael says it, that's real. Colby was gonna win that fight.
yeah, I
And we got
mean
the Cub Swanson knockout.
that was one of the best knockouts of the year for sure. I mean, spoiler alert, that's an honorable mention for knockout of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
what a way to potentially close out the career. He hasn't definitively said whether he's retiring or not. Um, you had Dustin Jacoby getting a nice knockout. You had just a bunch of other really, really solid performances, and that card, top to bottom, just delivered wholeheartedly. So
It was good. I'm glad we got that as our last one of the year. I
thousand
wish
percent close out the
I
year
wish Club
strong.
would have retired. I really do wish he would have retired after that. Would have been the perfect way. But the next award, Custom Shorts of the Year.
Yeah.
Uh,
So ones that stand out to me outside of our winner, of course, Max Holloway's floral that he's sported in both UFC 300 and at UFC 308. Um, I loved Dustin Poirier's that he used against Islam Makhachev, the floral with the little diamonds included in there. I thought that was really cool. Um, Another one that was kind of slept on is Brandon Moreno's
those
for
were
whenever
so
he
so
fought
fine,
for
man.
whenever he fought Amir Albazi. I thought those were really cool. Do you have any other ones you want to shout
Listen,
out before we give out the
personally,
winner?
personally, is in my list, and it's my opinion, so it's right. Charles Oliveira shorts were cool, man. I don't care what anyone says.
They were
The
cool. The
favelas,
sort of like favela look. It's
and then
supposed to like represent where he's from.
the Du Bronx down the side, man. Like that was
Yeah,
bad. That was sick, bro.
I like them. A lot of the custom shorts this year were good, but as far as like some of my top tier ones, I wouldn't have those in like my top five per se.
I loved them, man. They were sick. And Izzy's were so cool too. So were
Yeah,
Drake's.
a lot of really good ones.
But
Awesome to see that the UFC. Yeah,
the winner, Elias, man, he cooked with these.
yeah. The Matador, the Spain colors, the little
Little bull.
the leaves on the side. I mean, just every little detail on here. It's it just screams El Matador, and
Oh yeah.
it also helps whenever you have one of the best performances and best knockouts of the year in those shorts for sure. So knocking out a legend in Max Holloway
For the first time ever.
for the first time ever, these shorts were just so cool. They could not have done these better with the bull on the side of that right leg. Could not have been better.
I thought they were sick. They were really good. The next award, hey,
I
shout
don't
out
even know if we should actually if this is like actually an award, but like shout out Dan Ige.
and
We
Alex
put
Pereira.
this we were workshopping this before we started recording, and we were just like, listen, there were a lot of good um short notice guys that took on fights on
Yep.
very late notice, but shout out to Danny Gay,
There was only one of them that did it, man.
of
That did it
course.
like he did.
And by the
3
way,
hours notice.
this is going to be an annual award. It is going to be forever named the Danny Gay Award. Um,
So,
so shout
so
out to
you
Dan,
fighters, step up on their notice. You might win the Danny Gay Award.
and you're gonna get paid.
Yeah, it's a bonus. Hey,
He
I'll
said
never forget
he
being
said
at a
three.
cabin.
He said 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours doesn't matter. 50K EA, and he put on a good fight against Diego Lopez. Ultimately, he did lose.
He
He
lost, but I mean, and that last round too, like that was good.
it was competitive for most of the fight. It was getting really competitive in that last third round, and
I
also
mean,
just want to shout out Diego Lopez for taking that under those circumstances. He also was put on that card on short
short
notice
notice.
after the whole Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler fallout, included with the Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree fallout that turned somehow
Um,
into Anthony
it was like
Smith
8
writing
different fights.
Roman Dolidze. It shuffled through like five different fighters. It was crazy. So there is
But
two sides to this. Shout out to Diego for
shout,
that, but
shout,
ultimately
shout out
3 hours
Danny.
notice.
I'll never
Crazy.
forget, like, at a cabin with some of these, and I literally take a nap during some of the fight. I got really tired. It was a cabin. Hey, it was a weekend,
Hey,
and I wake up to the news. I literally woke up to them being like, Brian Ortega out. Denige stepped up. Shout out to Denige. Next award. This is my personal award that I wanted in here. The biggest aura merchant of the year. This is going to go to a guy that, after his last fight, yeah, give him the title shot. But before that, he really didn't deserve it. But also, I want to mention Kai Asakura because people were literally picking this dude to beat Pantoja just based off his aura alone. But he never fought in the UFC, and then he got washed. So, but there's only one guy. Shavkat Rachmanov, dude. This guy is literally like he gets glazed because he has a cool name and he wears a funny hat, dude. Like I'm telling you, before the Ian Gary fight, if his name was like Jack Benson, bro, literally no one would care. No one would care.
Okay, so I get it. I get the award. I do disagree with it though, because when you look at where 170 was at, and who else was there even before the Ian Gary fight, who else was there to fight Bilal Muhammad at 170 that was deserving?
JDM.
Was he healthy?
I mean, no, but then Ian Gary also fought the same people too, dude. Like, yeah, he wasn't finishing them, but like, bro, he put on arguably better performances than like Shavkat was getting rocked by like Neil Magny, dude.
I think you're getting. I think.
Or no,
It was
Jeff
Jeff
Neal.
Neal. It was Jeff Neal.
Yeah, he was getting rocked by Jeff Neal before he was able to take him down. He struggled with not struggle, but like he did not do well against Wonder Boy until he submitted him.
Wonder Boy was putting on a good fight before that. As we said before, this is your award. Biggest war merchant. Yeah.
I do really like Shavkat. I think, yeah, always he's a cool guy, and yeah, he's got 18 submissions or 17 finishes. But like, come on, man, give JDM a title shot. Which I don't know. He beat Ian Gary. He almost lost, but he beat Ian Gary. Next award, robbery of the year.
Yeah, there was a few ones this year. The judges are always a major topic in the sport. What can be done to fix the judging? If there should be more judges, if there should be open scoring, if the judges should be available to go up to the press and explain themselves rather than just have Dana talk about what he thinks or any of the other of the UFC brass. As far as a few robberies that I thought, one outside of our winner really stood out. It was the first fight on the entirety of the UFC 308 card. Fakhretdinov versus Leal,
Yeah.
actually, excuse me. Cormier and Anik and the whole broadcast crew were just absolutely stunned that that decision happened. It should have been 3-0 to Leal, respectfully. Yeah. And I just don't know how the judges out there got to that conclusion. But
the biggest one
of
the year, I don't, because the biggest one of the year, man. I was so mad at this.
Yeah.
I mean, bro, like Cyril Gahn didn't even think he won this fight. He was walking out the cage.
Yeah, Cyril Gahn versus Alexander Volkov is our robbery of the year. Cyril Gahn was objectively, like visibly upset at his performance. He had his head down before his hand was even raised. And going out of the cage, Volkov stepped out and Dana went straight up to him and he literally was like, "You got fucked."
Yeah.
It was blatantly so bad. I don't know what they do as far as how they match them up based on that win and loss, because the UFC and everyone knows that Volkov should have won that fight. Personally, I thought it was clearly 2-1 in favor of Volkov, and it could have been even a 3-0. I had a 2-1 though.
I also had a 2-1. I was so sure. I'm like, dude, Volkov's on this run. Give him the winner of John and Aspinall when that fight happens. I was like, dude, this is gonna be sick. And then they ruin it. They give Cyril Gahn the win.
And it sucks. And it also sucks too because right before we get to fight of the year, it sucks too because Volkov before that fight against Cyril Gahn, he had been on a win streak, like we said before, beating Pavlovich.
He was on like a 4-fight win streak, dude.
Yeah, and just to get that taken away from him and get a potential title fight taken away from him, no matter when that could have been, because obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Tom and John. But
Yeah.
it was just crazy. But on to our fight
Fight
of the
of the
year.
year.
I've got some honorable mentions that I would love to talk about. I'd say my runner-up would have been Islam Makhachev defending his title against Dustin Poirier. I mean, early on, I'm not gonna lie, first like 3 minutes of that first round, I thought it was gonna
Yeah.
be really bad.
Yeah.
I thought Dustin was gonna get submitted a lot quicker than what actually happened. But as the fight kind of went on, and you could just see Dustin's grit and his poise to try and get that title, because knowing it's his last title shot and his last crack. He even said after the fight, had he won the title, he would have retired right there, belt and gloves on the ground. Um, it was sensational. Dustin was landing strikes, um, and then the ground exchanges, especially the exchange where Islam almost sweeps or like almost ankle picked
It was beautiful, man.
Dustin and got the Darce choke. It was incredible. And do you have any other honorable mentions before we announce our winner?
Uh, can't think of any more. I just, like I said, I mean, we really like
Oh, I've
honorable.
got another one. UFC 308, Makhachev versus Orlov.
Oh yeah,
On the
Orlovsky versus
I don't know how Orlov was able to see out of that eye.
that was insane. That was a war.
Yeah, that is the clear definition of a war. That was actually insane. So that is my only other runner-up that I can, or honorable mention that I can think of,
Yep, that's
that
definitely
I've
we got
got
our
listed.
winner.
So our winner, though, of course,
Zellhuber and
Daniel
Ribovic.
Zellhuber in the sphere. I mean, this is just an all-out war. It was grimy.
Uh,
Each fighter had their moments. There were moments during each round, especially round three, which would have been round of the year had we had that award, where you thought either one could have gotten a finish. There was moments where both of them looked like they were going to be out. And shout out to both of these guys for just
we
hanging in there and
yeah,
taking it up. It was absolutely insane.
easily the best fight on the entire card.
Yeah. I mean, Esteban Ribovic, Daniel Zellhuber, that is fight of the year. Round three, especially. I mean, holy
Oh yeah,
shit.
our runner-up, or not a runner-up, our next award, breakout fighter of the year. The runner-up that I really want to mention is again the good buddy, my best friend, Tom Aspinall.
Best buddy. Viewed your
My best
Instagram
buddy,
story, Tom Aspinall.
Tom made his Instagram story twice. Aspinall, Tom, what would it take, Aspinall? Hey man, what a year! I mean, gained so many fans.
Yeah, I mean, throughout this whole, I think, along with obviously his performance against Curtis Blades, that speaks for itself. But the whole John Jones debacle and what has been how he was handling the media at the 309 fight week and at the press conferences, I think that only helped Tom Aspinall. I think that was marketing genius by John, and I don't think he did this intentionally for Tom, obviously, but I think that just sort of made Tom look like sort of a darling in the UFC, and the fact that John is stating all these crazy and objectively wrong reasons why the Tom fight wouldn't happen. I thought it was trolling, honestly. Like I said, I think it was marketing at the end of the day, but that really put a perspective on on Tom's side of it and how that fight needed to happen. So that definitely gained Tom some fans. Um, and yeah, but that's the main runner up. I think
Well,
we can
and
announce our one. Yeah,
well, I also want to mention Carlos Prates.
thousand
Um,
percent, 1000%.
crazy
Carlos
year,
also
also gained a lot of fans.
gained a lot of fans.
When you're part of the fighting nerds, man, I mean, everyone's gonna love you.
I mean that whole gym is just it's looking to be elite at this point. I mean, Rufy, Prates, Kyle Borjalho could be finding himself in a title opportunity this upcoming year.
Dean
Um,
Silva.
Gene Silva, I mean, the list goes on. So yeah, shout out to Carlos Prates as well. He's absolutely electric. His performances were all amazing, and his character is just super funny too. He's talking about smoking cigarettes.
Smoking through fight camp, like
It's wild. Yeah, he's a
yeah.
character, and it's a real. I'm really interested to see where he ends up at the end of this year. But with that being said, our winner is also in the 170-pound division, and that is Joaquin Buckley. Um, I mean, since he's dropped down from middleweight to 170, he's looked elite. He's gone from sort of this just a guy at middleweight, sort of like a gatekeeper, sort of in a sense like sort of a Kevin Holland position where he was teetering outside of the rankings. You know, he would win one, lose two, win two, lose one, and that commitment to that weight cut to 170 and just his overall improvement and how well-rounded he's become. You know, before this year, he was the guy who had maybe the greatest knockout ever, with the spinning kick knockout. Um, but I mean, Buckley has just completely turned it around, and he's now a player at 170. He also, depending on how the cards fall, he could find himself in the number one contender or potentially championship scenario this year.
Yeah, I really liked watching all of Buckley's fights this year. They were all, I mean, he what 3 out of 4 of them were finishes.
Yeah.
And he had he had gained also a lot of fans too. Going to the 300 press conference and asking Dana to fight on the St. Louis card, calling out Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
Um,
He knows. I mean, that call out was bad.
it was bad,
It was
but
bad.
I mean, look where it
Good
got him.
try.
I mean, um, the fight with Covington. He just really impressed me this year, man. Shout out Tyler the Creator, man. What a year.
He does look like Tyler. So just to round off all the fights that he had this year, he went 4-0 in 2024, of course, starting the year in March with a KO of Vicente Luque, who's always been established at 170. And then a decision win in May over Nursultan Ruzabov. And then, of course, to end the year, fighting in October and then in December. That's a good achievement in its own. That's a quick turnaround, and that just activity matters when it comes to a lot of these awards. And breakout fight of the year had to go to Joaquin Buckley. Of course,
Yeah.
October 5th, Stephen Thompson knocking him out in round 3, and then ending the year, of course, with the Colby Covington doctor stoppage victory and completely dominating that fight from beginning to end. So
Yeah.
Joaquin Buckley, breakout fight of the year. We'll see what he can do in 2025. It's going to be really interesting. 170 has blossomed, and
Feed him
he's a
to
big part of
Usman.
that.
Feed Usman to him, I should say.
Mhm.
Next award, comeback of the year. There, besides the winner, the only other one I can think of is JDM versus Gilbert Burns.
That's a
Because
really good one.
yeah,
UFC 299, Burns was doing really well with the takedowns, really well with his ground control. And it seemed early on in that fight that JDM was just not equipped enough to handle Gilbert's ground game. But as we saw later on in that fight, he landed the big knee, finished it with ground and pound. It was a crazy comeback by him.
yeah. But can you think of any others?
Yeah, my other one for sure is Neil Magny against Mike Malott in Canada. Neil Magny was a huge underdog in that fight and kind of just showed that veteran savvy, in the UFC it's common for these young prospects that are fresh in the UFC to kind of get fed to these older guys that had been in the rankings before or were lower in the rankings, that had the veterans of the game that had been around for a while. And Neil Magny showed his experience in that fight and why experience is such a powerful tool in MMA. So it was looking bad for him in that first round, but being able to transition on the ground and get top position and then just finish Mike Malott with that ground and pound, it was wild, and it's definitely not something that I have on my bingo card this year. So that would be my honorable mention. And with that being said,
The
the
winner.
comeback of the year award goes to Hoinato. Money's up. Money Moicano against Jalen Turner. Gets dropped bad early on in the fight. Thought it was over. And this is also partially a Jalen Turner issue because Jalen Turner decided to try and do like a Sean O'Malley style walk-off knockout, but
We wanted the
did not
bonus.
work did
We
not work
wanted.
out well in his favor at all. And um, this gets my comeback of the year because being hurt that badly and then coming back and finishing the fight in your own right, it was just a crazy sequence of events, and that's why it has to
Also,
win.
also great year for Moicano too. Should have mentioned him on breakout of the year. I mean, this
Thousand
fight
percent.
and then the BSD fight. I mean, he's kind of going up there, making a late run for the
Yeah,
title.
well, I mean, he's not even that old yet, so we'll see what he can do this year as well. But that is the
Yeah,
comeback of the year.
yeah. The next award, worst fight of the year. Some
There
ones
were
that
some stinkers.
the ones that come to mind for me immediately was Manel Kopp and Muhammad Makayev. I mean, bro literally lost. Muhammad Makayev lost all his aura and everything winning a fight. That's crazy.
Got cut from the UFC after winning a fight.
Cut from the UFC after winning a fight and staying undefeated. Um, I mean, the whole week these guys are like they had to be separated in the hotel. They're fighting backstage, literally in the octagon. Before the fight starts, they had to be held back by security. And then as soon as the fight starts, you would have never thought they hated each other.
Yeah, I mean, they go into that first round. They both enter the middle of the octagon really fast, and then it kind of just went a little flat from there. I mean, the beginning of that fight, especially, there's a lot of feeling out, and there weren't a lot of strikes landed and thrown, to be honest. So it was just a weird situation. And then, of course, the whole situation with Makayev afterwards getting cut, of course.
I mean, like the only entertaining parts of that fight was when Muhammad Makayev was doing the illegal stuff, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
that was wild.
the other one I can think of is Batista versus.
Jose Aldo.
I mean, what a fight, dude.
Yeah, you could see like visibly during that fight, especially whenever Batista was controlling Aldo against the cage. Aldo was just kind of like, dude, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
we're here to fight. We're not here to hug up against the fence. A lot of people thought Aldo won that fight, and Batista has been he's been getting attacked online pretty bad since that whole
No,
fight. I mean, you see the memes. My favorite ones are the memes of him versus like Tom Aspinall being announced and then him just being fed to the wolves
there was
because of
one
that
I saw.
performance.
It was like Mario Batista versus Pereira, Ngannou, and Aspinall. With Herb Dean as the ref.
Yeah, that was a bad fallout for Mario Batista.
Who was
So yeah,
on like a 7-fight win streak and like can be a contender and then
yeah,
like
he's
just
really good.
everyone hates him.
Yeah.
That was our worst fight of but the worst fight of the year
Yep.
is Mario Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington, off of also quite literally one of the worst cards, probably the worst card of the year.
Do you think that pay-per-view is the worst card of the year?
It's up there, man. It was
Worst
bad.
pay-per-view of the year?
It's up there.
I would.
I went her like 302.
I was gonna say 301 with
301 was pretty bad too.
301 because 302 was the Islam and Dustin.
Yeah, and that was like the only besides the Kevin Holland finish. That was like the only good fight on the card.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah,
But this one, I mean, I literally look at this award is about this fight. We're not even talking about it. That's how. No, I don't even remember anything that happened from this fight. Like actually,
it was. I mean, Pennington was doing well on the feet. That's where she won the fight, and Bueno Silva just did not look like a very experienced or well-rounded striker in that fight. I mean, she tried to initiate some takedowns, get on the ground, but Pennington wasn't having any of it. And credit to Pennington, she won the title. But I mean, this fight, all in all, was very
it was
forgettable.
bad. It was bad. I mean, I know people literally were like tweeting like, "Yeah, I just woke up from my nap." Like people were actually napping during this fight, bro. Like,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
thank the Lord, I was working during this fight. I had to watch it.
Yeah, I sat through it.
Next award, debut of the year. One that comes to mind, Kayla Harrison. Obviously, what a year! Debuting on the one of the biggest, if not the biggest card ever.
1,000%. Yeah. Finishing Holly Holm the way she did, it was flawless. She didn't have a single mark on her face. And also credit to her for making the weight in her debut as well. That's a big storyline, which
Yeah,
but another one that I have going back to the Fight Nerds camp who had an awesome year. Um Mauricio Rufy,
yep,
his debut. He kind of gets sort of um he doesn't get mentioned as much when it comes to the Fight Nerds as much as like a Carlos Prates especially and a Kyle
yeah.
Verhadio, but he had an awesome year and that debut itself, I mean, it was electric. He with the finish that he got and everything. It was awesome.
Love
Um
Rufy. Shout out Brazilian Conor McGregor, man.
yeah,
But the winner, again, going back to the fighting nerds, his brother. Not really.
Carlos Prates,
Carlos
of
Prates.
course. Debut
I
of the
mean,
year.
yeah.
Um he was sensational. I mean, any fight that this guy gets into, you know it's going to be electric. And I mean, he's been winning in this much so far. He's already ranked top 10 in the world, I believe, at welterweight. So,
He's
or
so
he's top 15, I believe.
I think so. Something like that. I don't know. He's so fun to watch though. He was the only bright spot for me on 305.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it was he was one of the main talking points out of it, and he continued it for the rest of the year.
yeah. Shout out Carlos Prates, man. Hopefully he gets it going this year. Next award, sub of the year. Obviously, one to mention was Islam sub against Dustin after going through that war with him, round 5. Crazy sweep of the leg to get the guillotine into the
Was it
darts.
I thought it was round 4.
No, it was round 5.
Yeah,
Round 5. I mean, I was stressing. I thought they were going to call a doctor stoppage because Islam was bleeding from the head.
you are a
Uh,
big Islam guy, so I definitely could see
yeah, I
the
was
concern
stressing, but
there.
he got that sub, man, and it was, I mean, beautiful sequence of events right there if you really love wrestling. Um,
Another one that I want to highlight as far as an honorable mention goes, Paddy Pimblett versus King Green on UFC 304.
Talks about
Um,
it. That
yeah, Paddy coming in as, it's his biggest test in the UFC by far, going against King Green, a seasoned veteran, someone who everyone would expect to have the striking advantage. And he shot a takedown against Paddy, and Paddy's always been a gamer when it comes to the jiu-jitsu and the ground game. And he locked up, went for the guillotine at first, and then locked up that triangle, had the arm bar as well, and put out
oh yeah,
King Green cold first round. And especially being in that UK crowd, feeling that energy with the custom orange shorts, it was the
one of the
whole.
yeah. Also, I would say one of the best walkouts of the year too, right there.
Oh, Paddy's walkouts are always electric. Always. That whole hit he had, that was the best night Paddy could have had. I mean, it could
Oh
not
yeah,
have gone any better.
but the winner literally broke his face.
Hamzat Chimaev versus Robert
15
Whitaker. That
seconds
is the sub
in.
of the year. Um, Going into this fight for me, I did pick Robert Whitaker because I
Really, I
thought
didn't even.
Whitaker was going to be, I thought Whitaker was going to be able to sustain that early onslaught, sort of how Usman did last year. And being that this was a 5-round fight, I thought that Whitaker was going to pace himself, try and stay safe from Hamzat's takedowns, and then get him late after Hamzat eventually potentially would have gassed out. But I mean, Hamzat shot that takedown that he ended up finishing the fight with from super far away, grabbed Whitaker's ankle and got on his back so quick, and then it wasn't even a second in to him squeezing on
Broke
his face that Whitaker's teeth caved in, his like bottom 5 teeth on the front row, caved
Yeah.
in. Um, it was a crazy sequence of events, and now Hamzat's in the mix. He should be getting the next title shot after.
He should be getting it now.
I agree. I so I think it's not crazy that Strickland's getting it. I get it, but if you're asking me which one I think should get it right now, I do think it's Hamzat. But it's always a little difficult with Hamzat, it seems, being that he seemingly isn't able to fight in the US. So it's up to the UFC and up to DDP also to be willing to fight somewhere else for Hamzat to get that eventual title shot. But yeah, submission of the year, most stakes behind outside of maybe Islam and Dustin on a submission that happened this year. Hamzat subbing Robert Whitaker.
Knockout of the year. A little bit of a shocker, but we're gonna mention it as a honorable mention.
Max Holloway did not win this award.
He didn't, but I mean, insane knockout. Will go down in history as one of the best ever.
That just kind of speaks to how crazy some of the other knockouts this year were. That Max Holloway last second knockout of Justin Gaethje isn't our winner. I mean, it just depends on how you look at it, right? You want to look at the stakes and the level of the fight that's happening, or do you want to look at the knockout itself and the technical aspect of it and what actually happened? Some other ones that I want to talk about, really just one other one. Vinicius Oliveira, his knockout on one of the UFC Apex cards, the flying knee. He lands the left hand first. Looks like he had his opponent wobbled anyway. His opponent backs up, and then Vinicius just sprints at him, lands the double flying knee, and it's one of the cleanest flying knees I've ever seen in my life.
It was beautiful. And then he literally, the way, bro literally ragdolled and fell to the ground. That was. But the winner, the best knockout of the year, in our humble opinion, is Shara Bullet's double spinning back fist versus Armin Petrosian.
Never been done. It's just the most Shara Bullet ever thing to do. It shows his creativity of striking, his versatility of striking, and I mean, he walks off didn't need any follow-up shots. This is one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life. Like I said before, I've never seen anything that replicates this, and so this had to be my winner. Respect to Max, love you, Max, but Shara Bullet gets our knockout.
Who even thinks of doing this? Who's just here's one back fist, I'm gonna throw another one real quick. What? And then it works too.
And that's the thing. Before he even threw it, you could kind of see him in his stance setting up the initial first one. So I was like, okay, there's a back fist coming at some point. But then he throws the second one, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Fighters take notes. This move has 100% succession rate.
And for now, it does, yeah.
No. And then coming up to the end of the awards, we got our female fighter of the year. Kind of want to shout out Valentina Shevchenko winning her belt back on one of the biggest events the UFC's ever even put on. I mean, as kind of boring as that fight was, hey, she did it.
Got the belt back. Another highlight that could be mentioned would be Zhang Weili, also 1-0 this year, defending her title against Yang Xiaonan at UFC 300. And then one more that I would want to shout out is it's not the UFC, even though we usually just mainly talk about the UFC, but Dakota Ducheva in the PFL, 4-0 this year in the tournament, won the $1 million check. And while she did have 4 wins and that activity matters, I value, whenever we talk about our winner, the level of opponent compared to the number of wins. She did have a giant win over Talia Santos, which, I mean, we talk about Valentina Shevchenko arguably lost against Talia Santos. So Dakota Ducheva has to get mentioned. She's my runner-up, but
the winner,
she's not my winner. My winner is Kayla Harrison. First of all, just making
Practical Joker's GOAT, Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, first of all, just making weight. Let's start with that. No one thought that she had that good of a chance. You talk about this a year ago. Her making 135 was a fever dream.
Yeah.
She made 135. She didn't look the worst. I've seen worse weight cuts than how she's looked in both of her weight cuts this year at UFC 300 and 307. And then, yeah, her performances speak for themselves. Debuting against Holly Holm on the biggest event of all time, arguably finishing her in the second round unscathed, um, just completely dominating, showing the levels of her judo game and ground game.
Yeah.
And then she did get tested. She did get tested at UFC 307 against Ketlin Vieira, but still just showing her level and dominance on the ground game. She didn't do what she did against Holly Holm, of course, but I mean, those two wins I just value more than I do Dakota Duchev's 4 in the PFL. And it's also just, it is sort of a strange year for female fighter of the year because you normally would, you've got Pena as the bantamweight champion, Valentina as the flyweight champion, Zhang Weili is the strawweight champion. Usually one of them is the fighter of the year. But
Yeah.
it had to be Kayla this year. She had the two best
Okay,
wins.
man.
And
I really like watching her fight. Also, a freaking specimen of a human being right there.
yeah, you look at the picture we have up right now, just bigger biceps than my
Than
head.
like every dude that I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout out Kayla Harrison. Hopefully she fights for the title this year. Last award, the big one, male fighter of the year.
Let's just cut this. Let's just get this out of the way right now. This is a 2-horse race. There's no one even close to being into contention.
The only person I could think of that you could throw in there, just to give another name, would be Joaquin Buckley, just because he did get went 4-0.
1,000%. I mean, you could do that with Prates. You could do that with Buckley. A lot of other fighters
Diego
this year
Lopez.
Diego Lopez went 3-0. But ultimately, our runner-up is actually, no, let's announce the winner first, and then we'll talk about why we have a runner-up.
Okay, and I will say I kind of like this is one like we said we agreed with everything. This is one I kind of butt heads with because like we did end up giving it to Alex Pereira,
male fighter of the year. 3 wins this year. 3 wins this year. UFC 300, UFC 303, and UFC 307. He essentially saved all these cards, and because I mean, you go back to yeah, I mean, you go back to 300 as we talked about before, not really knowing what was going to happen with that main event. A lot of fans were concerned that whatever it was going to be wasn't going to be 300 worthy. He comes in, he dominates, iconic knockout over Jamal Hill. And then 303, probably his biggest feat of the year when it comes to saving a card. I mean, Connor pulls out 3 weeks notice. Alex is in Australia doing a whole travel tour and doing a bunch of these obligations that he had, and gets a call from the UFC, 3 weeks notice, do you want to fly around the world and rematch someone that you've already beat? He says yes. He does Yuri even worse than he did last time. It was one of the craziest head kicks I've seen. And then UFC 307, another card where fans were concerned about what the main event would be. People were suspecting that it was going to be Pena versus Pennington. And then you get the announcement from the UFC that Hotan's stepping in. I mean, it was announced maybe a month before the card, which is not conventional at all. So that's why I think he should get it. Just helping the UFC out so much, being so reliable. The least amount of days to defend the title 3 times, broke Ronda Rousey's record. Hotan has to be my fighter of the year. You want to talk about Topuria?
Yeah. So obviously, again, stepping on short notice, all 3 fights, finishing all of them. I mean, it's really great. But like in my opinion, like look at you said yourself on the female part there, you value who you fought more. In my opinion, beating Volk and Max Holloway back to back, knocking them out. Those are better wins than knocking out Jamal Hill and then knocking out Yuri Prohaska, and then going life or death, basically with Khalil Darius Roundtree. I mean, I again respect Alex Pereira. A crazy year. Might be the biggest moneymaker that the UFC has right now. Their biggest star, easily. Everyone loves Alex Pereira. My mom loves Alex Pereira. But I don't know. Just like looking at what Topuria did this year, being the first person to beat Volkanovski at 1-5 ever, being the first person to knock out Max Holloway, and he did it crazy too. Like, and when like he held his word. He said as soon as fight started, he wanted to meet in the middle. Max didn't do it, but I mean, like in those
Nah,
wins,
Max held up the curtain. He was trying to
he
ring in
held
the
up the curtain,
bull.
and it came to bite him. But I mean, those wins are better than Jamal Hill, Yuri, and Darius. They just are.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you said. I just think that without Alex Pereira stepping up and doing what he did for literally all three of these cards, this year wouldn't have been what it is, and we wouldn't talk about 300 in the same light, 303 and 307, of course. And then just his sort of brand as a whole, I mean, just grew exponentially from this year. He is the biggest, as you said, the biggest superstar in the UFC at this moment, in my opinion. Um, and that's because of his activity and his reliability and his performances. As a martial arts fan, you just can't get enough of Alex Pereira. So I have Alex. I don't I don't scoff at all or even like I have no problem with Topuria being named Fighter of the Year. There's a lot of publications out there that have Topuria as Fighter of the Year. I get it.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm going with Poetan and the activity that he brought this year.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to argue. It's really hard. You could definitely see both sides. You can see.
1000%.
I just think I would give the edge to Topuria a little bit more, just because of his wins.
And
But those are
here's the beautiful thing about that before you wrap things up. I mean, both of them had such good years, and it sets them up for they could have even bigger 2025s. I
I
mean,
know you're looking at one becoming a triple champ and the other becoming double champ.
I mean, outside of even the potential belts that could be had, um, imagine Taporia fighting in Spain. I mean, that would be
It's
electric. And then Alex, no matter where he goes, is gonna be Alex. He's gonna main event multiple
he's gonna,
pay-per-views this
he's
year,
gonna get there.
hopefully. And yeah, but with that being said, that is our award show. Those are the awards that we have. And 2024 just could not have gone better, in my opinion. It was such a
Yeah.
fun year in the UFC. And now we turn our page to 2025. So on our next episode, we will be predicting each champion in each weight class, going from the women's weight classes all the way up to heavyweight at the men's. And we will also predict some of these awards that we've just handed out for next year, such as male fighter, female fighter, breakout fighter, and other awards of that nature. So
Yep.
stay tuned for that, and we'll see you on the next one.
Later.